This is a story about China and about a crackdown on its Christians. It's a story that's left families fractured.
My father is still in prison.
And drawn attention from the highest of places.
And there's another gentleman, a pastor, would like to see him get out. I'm going to bring his name up.
It's a tale about one detained pastor.
Hallelujah.
Whose footsteps we have followed.
So we are gonna head in.
To the site of his arrest and to the place where he was detained.
We're here to ask about one inmate.
Ezra Jin's story is a remarkable tale of defiance and deliverance. The most unlikely journey to freedom, now told on camera for the very first time.
Hello， 大家好，我是利恩。我们常说大国博弈啊，充满了只有政治的算计以及利益，但是真的是如此吗？当号称自由、民主、进步的国家，在面对到独裁集权的政府时，难道之间真的只有算计与利益这么单纯吗？今天我们来看一个非常振奋人心的消息，那就是我们都知道，2026年5月的时候，川习会在北京盛大的展开了嘛，川普总统跟习近平习大大主席也在这个媒体的镁光灯聚焦点下呢，完成了非常象征两国友好和平的态度。那随即而来的闭门会议呢，没有人能够说得清楚里面交谈的内容是什么，对吧？但是外界一致猜想的，不外乎就是美国希望中国可能在伊朗封锁荷姆兹海峡的事情上面呢，劝说伊朗能够解开。好，那中国大陆呢，可能也会要求美国减少其经济制裁，比如说降低关税等等等等，对吧？可是没有想到呢，就在7月4号的美国独立日，也就是美国的国庆日上我们却看到了一个最让人动容，也是最让人感到不可思议的一幕，那就是中国大陆居然释放了关押了长达9个月的北京最大家庭教会的主任牧师金明日牧师。他不但顺利的从广西监狱被释放出来，并且一路呢，公安人员随车护送直奔广州国际机场，连金明日牧师自己都感到百思不得其解，难道不是要把我转移到其他监狱吗？不，没有想到他们真的搭上了国际的航班，而最终抵达了美国洛杉矶，在那里等待金明日牧师的是他久未谋面的家人。这一刻，大家才明白，川习会的闭门会议上面，川普总统居然谈了一个对美国自身而言可以说完全毫无利益可言的一场 bargain， 一场交易。美国居然愿意为了一个只是中国自己的家庭教会，但是却被宗教迫害的金明日牧师呢，来提出斡旋，希望中方可以放人。而我之前在这个专访移居美国的知名作家林露小姐呢，那时候是不是就特别谈了像春雨教会王怡牧师这类在中国家庭教会当中受到政治不合理迫害被关押的牧师？那时候中国大陆有些网友呢，就喜欢跑来跟我杠就表示说，哎呀，家庭教会的牧师那不过都是因为他们自己呢违反了国内法律，炮轰政府，或者是本质上就是一个不当集会。可是中国政府至今也不敢把家庭教会视为是犯罪集团，理由很简单嘛，就是因为在国际的众目睽睽之下，谁都知道说教会本身的组成性质，这种属于人民自发性的宗教活动呢，它本质上你不能够以犯罪的名义为由不准人集会。就好像我如果在我自己家里面，我跟我的亲朋好友一起唱诗赞美读经祷告的话，那谁能够说这样的家庭聚会它是犯法的？所以中国政府当然也是睁一只眼闭一只眼。可是中国政府长期关注打压的就是那些发展最为迅速以及壮大的家庭教会。所以对于这种在中国大陆被视为眼中钉的这几个大牧师被抓的新闻，可以说除了中国基督徒确实是有苦难言，不容易为他们发声之外，我更对于那种许多还在帮政府维护，容不得一点点对政府的批判呢，感到悲哀。因为这一次金明日牧师被释放的事件，恰恰打脸了中国政府自己，完全没有任何合理关押的理由。
估计是不是那个最高人民检察院的那个徽，像国会一样的，他们有国会，然后3位就是负责我们这个案件的检察长还有检察官， 然后他们就在前面坐着，然后向我宣布，就是他们的这种决定。大概它的内容是这样啊，很有意思的。但是金明日，2007年开拓了西安教会，然后各处发展教会，要谋取利益，然后涉案金额有多少，犯罪证据确凿，然后犯罪事实成立。根据《中华人民共和国刑事诉讼法》，我们决定不起诉你了。哎，我说我听不懂啊，然后他们就再念了一次，我说。我不是没听得懂你说的话，我觉得你们的那个逻辑不符合，应该是犯罪证据确凿，然后犯罪事实成立的话，我们决定把你起诉到法院，或者是说犯罪证据不确凿，然后犯罪事实呢不能断定，我们决定要释放你了，这两个嘛，但是为什么说犯罪事实成立又不起诉我释放我呢？
所以他们的回答是什么？
他很紧张，那个检察官很紧张。我只能说到这里。我大概知道了。我说，感谢习近平主席做了英明的决定，然后因为他们都录像，然后就离开了那个地方。
你试想，如果今天他是一个有实质犯罪证据，并且罪证确凿的犯人的话，那么过去中美外交斡旋历史上面。美国政府也不可能予取予求，要求释放就能释放，对吧？而有人就会想了，那你说的不过就是因为这个金明日牧师是基督徒嘛？那川普政府背后的保守主义都是以基督教为核心的支持选民，这个不过就是讨好国内的基督徒选民，为了选票的算计而做出了一场看似人权的行动嘛？但是并不然啊，因为事实上后来大家才知道，在这一场闭门会议当中，川普政府跟中共进行谈判外交，要求释放的犯人名单当中，除了金明日牧师以外，另外一个就是鼎鼎有名的前香港苹果日报的老板黎智英。但是对中共而言，他们这次拒绝释放黎智英，理由很简单，对中共政府来讲，金明日牧师不过是一个宗教犯，黎智英是一个彻彻底底的政治犯。释放一个金明日牧师，无损中共自身的利益以及在海外的形象。但是对于释放了黎智英这样的一个前反共的政治犯来说呢，却是中共万万不可能逾越的红线，也因此反而更加的凸显出中国政府其实对待犯人的态度，本质上就不是依法而行。
说得好！
那我们就话不多说，一起来看这一个美好的见证，也让我们一起重新去思考，大国之间除了政治跟算计之外，是什么东西在驱使着像美国这样的国家要做这一种吃力不讨好，还占不到半分便宜的利他行为？我们一起来看吧 ，Let's go！
We're not starting this journey in China itself. Instead, this tale begins in a quiet American suburb.
It's pretty early in the morning. We're in a suburb of Washington, D.C., and we're off to meet a man at the centre of a really pretty remarkable story. He's a guy who, up until just a few weeks ago, was in a Chinese jail.
This home, this family, are at the centre of a saga that can feel barely believable.
Hi, Ezra.
Yes, good to see you. Yes, 谢谢你们，谢谢你们。
Thank you for having us.
This is Pastor Jin Mingru, also known as Ezra Jin.
Must be a strange time for you.
Just 3 weeks ago, he was a prisoner,
Like a princess?
charged with crimes connected to the Christian church he runs.
Say hi, baby.
Yes.
Today, against all the odds, he is at his daughter's home in America.
What is that, baby?
An ordinary family scene
你看他一直看着。
with extraordinary significance. It is fleetingly rare for China to release a so-called prisoner of conscience. Even more rare for them to feel able to talk. We are the first journalists to sit down with him in person. This is the first time he's told his story to a camera. What he has to say matters because this is the context. A wider crackdown on Christians. Across China, raids and detentions have targeted underground churches. These movements tend to worship online and don't want to submit to strict state controls. They are officially banned. This is a story we've followed for months, to the sites of key churches and clampdowns. It's a story that has led us to Pastor Ezra Jin. This is him in happier, healthier times. He's the founder and leader of Zion Church, an underground Protestant movement. Long the subject of official attention. In October, he was arrested and jailed.
Does Lala love you, Betty? Yes.
We first met his family earlier this year, back in May. Then his daughter Grace could only tell her children about the grandfather they had never met.
Do you know which one's mommy's daddy?
This was our first introduction to him and his church.
He's just a very kind person, but also a very complex person, I suppose. When you peel back just the warmth, like you get a deeply intellectual, deeply like serious type of a thought leader, and he cares so much about his faith. He cares so much about China and the people around him.
She was then heavily pregnant and mourning the things that he'd missed.
We were able to tell him about the baby right before the detention. And so we're really grateful for that. But of the 7-8 months that I've been pregnant, as the baby grows inside me, my father is still in prison, and he serves as a role model for us all of like how to live our faith.
We wanted to investigate what happened to Pastor Jin, and so just a month before his sudden release, we followed in his footsteps all the way to the southern Chinese city of Beihai. It's a laid-back holiday town. In recent years, Jin moved his church here to escape the ire of Beijing. It's a place where he thought it could be safe. In the end, this place proved him wrong. We're nervous, and we have reason to be. We are the first journalists attempting to visit the place where Ezra Jin was arrested. At this moment, it is a highly sensitive thing to attempt.
We know that the apartment where Pastor Jin was living and working is really heavily surveilled now, but his community have invited us up. They want us to go up and take a look, but we're going to have to keep as low a profile as possible. So we're going to leave our big cameras behind. We're going to work just on these small ones. We're going to wear masks and hats to get in, to just try and avoid being detected for as long as we can.
It doesn't take us long to find the place. Jin lived here with his elderly mother-in-law.
This is the compound, okay. I reckon that's him up there, okay.
We've been told a family friend will meet us at the gate.
All right, so we are gonna head in. Are we all ready, guys?
We keep our cameras down.
Ni hao. Dr. Chen?
We walk in silence. He gestures that the lifts here are bugged. Inside, Dr. Chen shows us around.
Okay. This was Ezra Jin's room? Yeah. Okay.
The place is peaceful, no signs of the upheaval it saw. The other person here is Jin's mother-in-law.
So who is this? This Pastor Jin? Jinmu. And this is your daughter?
She doesn't want to be interviewed, but she does want to show us her family in happier times. Across the hall, a study and a library.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Oh, there's a real proper library.
a space to meet and to think. Dr. Chen was here when the police came.
就在这栋楼抓的就是，当天晚上的警察是在负1楼和1楼很多，然后呢，就是照着名单抓的，然后就在他家，然后把他领到这个房间，这里边有很多自己就是印的那些书都后来就全部收走了。
He was also taken but released the next day. Their target, he says, was clear.
抓过去主要是询问主要相金牧师相关的一些，金牧师做的什么，金牧师他有没有跟这个敬拜有没有得二维码，有没有收钱，真的耶稣基督是唯一的头的话，这是一个比较困难的。
Thank you so much.
They have taken a significant risk by inviting us here. They insisted it was something they wanted. For their safety and ours, we stay only 15 minutes. We felt the tension they live with. We had one more stop in this town, the prison where Jin and his colleagues were held. There were 18 of them here when we visited. It was hard to know what was happening inside. We wanted at least to ask.
Hello, we are foreign journalists. We're here to ask about one inmate.
Yeah, we're here to ask whether Pastor Ezra Jin is in this detention centre.
His family are worried about his health. We want to ask how he's doing.
We were waved away, none the wiser. Back in America, we now have a first-hand account of what it was like. A former Chinese inmate talking about their time in prison is incredibly rare. But Ezra Jin is free, and he wants to tell the world what happened.
看守所的情况呢，当然是从来没有经历过的事啊，就是非常非常艰难了。我们一般将近30个人睡在一个大窗铺啊，小板凳里面待着，然后所有的就是时间全部都规定好了。你走路也得举手才能走路，不举手走路的话就受到惩罚有很多啊。
He was ultimately charged with illegal business operations. He says he was under constant pressure to confess. Claims we've put to the authorities and that have gone unanswered.
他呢，就是要说服，但是你得考虑一下你的同事们。真的，这次抓的人里边有一些人是有家的人，你这么不认罪啊，牵连到他们。哎呦，我里边真是特别的，就是动摇啊。将近1个月没见我的律师，然后就马上给家人写个信，就是第一个，我不会认罪，第二个，我不会自杀。
Can you just talk me through what happened when that release came? How did it all play out?
突然就管教来叫我，金明日赶紧出来！我以为是平常的什么审讯呢，所以出去，你就收拾你的东西。那个警车经过了我的小区的时候，他也没停下来。哎呦，我就说那不是回家呀。然后我就到了那个高铁站，一个车厢全都是包了，就是他们都是警察，有至少20-30个人嘛，都是便衣。有一个负责人就是金牧师啊，你知道你去哪儿吗？我说我不知道，可能到隐秘的地方吧。他就说你往好处想吧。我说我不敢想。
In fact, he was being taken to the airport, told that while his crimes had been established, he would not face prosecution. He boarded a plane and flew to America. 就是我出来以后就看到孩子们、妻子，还有那个小 baby 刚刚1个月的，就我想象不了，这再好也
我在里边想到的最乐观、最好的，也没有这种故事。我是一个普通的中国家庭教会的牧师，但是为了拯救这样的人，我不知道的很远的教会，他们都出来，信徒们都出来说，我们声援金牧师西安教会，我感觉到特别的蒙福，所以特别的谢谢所有的人。
For Grace and her husband Bill, retaining a semblance of normality has not been easy.
What are you doing?
They had 2 days warning that he might be released, but they dared not believe it until he was here.
For the longest, I was like, are you sure they got him? Like they didn't like just switch another person and pretended that it was my dad?
They told us it's very delicate. Trying to get people out of China, you really can't say it's certain until it's wheels up. And then Grace heard that it's a Chinese plane, and she's like, well, we really can't be certain until it's real wheels down. So it was unbelievable.
And are you able to tell me about the reunion moment? It must have been incredibly special.
When he first walked in, I like literally didn't recognize him. He looked a lot thinner. Somehow he looked even like a little bit shorter than I imagined. I just didn't recognize his eyes almost. And so it took me a couple moments to realize that, oh, this is my dad. But I mean, again, like it's just such a miracle too.
China. We respect China.
So how has this highly unusual release come to pass?
Yeah, I'll be going to China in a little while. There's another gentleman, a pastor, would like to see him get out. I'm going to bring his name up.
Well, there seems to be one clear reason. A personal plea from a president to a president.
Did you bring up with President Xi and the political prisoners in China?
I think he's giving very serious consideration to the past.
我是通过新闻联播看到的啊，他们说什么话的我都不可能知道，特别的感动。
There is universal agreement here amongst officials and observers that this case is really pretty unprecedented in recent times. It could only have been agreed at the highest level. But what feels strange is that despite what feels like a real coup of diplomacy, the American government, the American president have been completely silent about it. No one's claiming any credit. And that raises a whole range of questions about why. What was agreed? What might have been promised in return? And crucially, what does the whole thing say about China? It is a system that remains dogged in its pursuit of control, that is deeply suspicious of groups that are different, and that is unlikely to change.
For those who watch China's strategy closely, it feels there must be more to it.
It'd be unusual that China was doing it for simply altruistic reasons. What they hope to get in return for it, beyond a measure of goodwill, does it translate into regarding tariffs or Taiwan or technology? Remains to be seen, but as long as Xi Jinping is president and head of the Communist Party in China, we're not going to see a relaxation of religious policy, whether it's to Christians or Muslims or Tibetan Buddhists.
And that is a painful thought for many, because there are many still behind bars. These faces are just those from Pastor Jin's church. People like Pastor Wong Kong, arrested in front of her then 3-year-old daughter. Pastor Wong Lin, whose family have since fled abroad. And Pastor Ying Hui Bin, who was arrested alongside his wife, although she has since been bailed. And so we have a final stop on this journey, and it is to the western Chinese city of Chengdu. It is a metropolis, a hub of lives being lived as normal, but it is also a home to some of the families fractured.
在我快生产的时候，他给我寄来的。他说：“婷婷，平安，愿主的脸继续光照你，孩子与爸妈。我也因听到你的力量而受安慰，期待早日相见。告诉卓一，爸爸想他。告诉爸妈注意身体。爱你的莫成雷。”但我仍然到现在读信的时候也会热泪盈眶。对，这个是在我生产前的。
A few irregular letters is all the contact Ting Ting now has with her husband.
他刚开始在里面的时候
Pastor Lin Shucheng was arrested here at their home and is charged with fraud.
害羞了。
In the 9 months he's been in prison, she has given birth to their third child alone. There is a fragility to her life and her hope.
这我们真的是没有罪，我们是没有做任何危害社会、危害他人的人，去让他们能够睁眼去看看他们所关的都是什么样的一个人群。对，因为他们关的几位人就是几个代家庭。
It clearly all weighs heavily on Pastor Ezra Jin that he got so lucky while others did not. He is here to talk about his story, but he's also here to talk about China and the ways he hopes it can change.
我们初步的估计还有100多位牧者还在这个监狱里啊。除了这些牧师之外，还有好多其他的信仰群体，还有一些良心犯。千万不要认为我一个人释放好像是 happy ending。
But are Chinese Christians still living in a lot of fear? Are people still quite worried?
教案也非常频繁的发生，很多的教会的信徒也是很恐惧。官员就是很理直气壮的说：“今天我要看共产党厉害还是你们的上帝厉害。”这种意识形态的冲突来，他们处理问题的，那么就是教案就越来越频发。
And what is your message for President Xi Jinping? What do you think he should or could do now in relation to churches like yours?
中国问题啊，需要最高领导人英明的做出决定。有的人就是说，习能改变吗？习会做这样的事情吗？他能做吗？这个我不知道。但是有一点很重要，有一天，我是真的坚信，中国家庭教会会合法化，因为这是好，从某种意义上对政府好，对社会好，对共产党也好。
This is baby Ezra. He's named after his grandpa, Pastor Ezra Jin.
Grace took these videos for us when her baby was just a few days old, and things still felt very bleak.
We are really grateful that we have this bundle of joy in this season of difficulties.
She could barely have imagined then how soon baby Ezra would meet with his namesake.
所以每天这样看的时候，都抱着的时候也都特别的感恩，特别感恩。就是我觉得现在我死也是我是没有遗憾的，我没有什么遗憾，特别的高兴。
China has not commented on the release of Pastor Jin. It says all cases will be handled in accordance with the law.
Finish, you know.
It insists that religion is free and protected and rejects what it calls foreign interference. For this family, this feels like a miracle. But there are many others still waiting for theirs.
这一次啊，川普总统不但成功了 解救出了金明日牧师，更是首次让中共政府没有设任何的条件。也就是说，过去这种所谓人权斡旋呢，中国政府碍于面子的理由呢，多半都会要求人质要么转渡到第三国，再过几年转渡到美国，或者是要求释放的犯人呢不得再接受任何公众舆论的受访。可是这一次非常特别没有想到金明日牧师的释放是没有附带任何其他条件的。所以也因此呢，我们有幸可以看到专访的金明日牧师来为我们描述他这一段惊心动魄这9个月的牢狱生涯，以及他是如何完全事先都不知情的情况下，一直到坐上飞机的那一刻他才真的有感而发的感叹说，我真的获救得释放了。
估计是公安部的人带我，就是经过了海关，然后就直接送到飞机。
你没有护照对吗？
我说护照是他们没收的，所以护照他们一直拿着。
所以当时还给您了吗？
把我直接送到机场以后，飞机里边，以后进去的时候他就给了我护照。然后我就找了我的那个座位，坐下来的时候旁边坐着那个美国人，我就大概猜到了，他就说我是。金牧师，欢迎你得到释放。我是美国领事馆的领事，美国大使馆的领事。
您当时脑子里面闪过的第一个念头是什么？
我实际上是有点懵的，根本想象不了，就是因为所有的信息对里边的人来说都是切断的。然后那个领事就是说，我已经等了你8个小时在这里，不仅仅是我们美国大使馆，实际上美国白宫的官员也都一直等待。今天中国政府说是要释放你，但是不知道能不能真正得到释放。他说，
只有等您坐到飞机上之后，大家心头的这个石头才能落下来。
甚至坐在那儿他也没说。飞机起飞了以后他才发。飞机已经起飞了，我和金牧师已经起飞了。然后那个领事告诉我好多的内容就是特别的感动。他说。我们按照现在的那个就是签证程序的话，你的签证最快的给你也得15天。所以现在我没有签证，问题是没有签证的话，按照航空那个协议就不能进到，就是中国政府
连飞机都不能上，
不能上的。他说这个有协议，所以。美国政府有好多部门呢出证明，虽然这个人没有签证，但是我们保证他一定得到签证，所以就放了我。然后他就说，我们特别的激动，因为20年来我们为了救中国国内的形形色色的人做了很多的努力，但是挫折更多。但是这次这么快的，无条件的。
最后我也想说的就是，很多人常都说政教就该分离，政教分离，政教分离，错了。其实从来全世界就没有发生过所谓政教分离这件事情。我们今天可以看到，因为政治力的介入而将一个无辜的牧师逮捕，但我们也同时看到了，因为政治的介入而将一个远在海外他国根本是不相干的语言、不相干的种族的一个无辜的牧师获得释放。所以政治能够关人，政治也可以救人。什么时候政治是不干涉宗教了？请各位观众朋友在下面打个留言，让我知道一下，哪个国家的政治是完全不干犯或者说不干涉他本国的任何宗教团体的？那既然没有的情况下，为什么很多基督徒常常还会说我们要谨守政教分离、恪守政教分离呢？什么时候你有办法做到政府完全不干涉宗教，你才有办法谈什么叫政教分离。说的。但是反过来说，当今天一个基督教的国家，当川普总统他重新执政掌权，他在各部门设立了所谓的信仰办公室，要求各部会的首长在开会前都要一起静下来祷告的时候，我们反而却看到这样的国家，它的政教更合一，但是它却让宗教得以更自由，反而更没有迫害。矛盾的是，看起来越是 一个政府里头没有宗教的信仰，或者说宗教的政治人物的时候，反而对社会上的宗教团体会进行更多的监管跟打压。当他今天都没有的时候，那么无神论本身就是他的宗教，就是一个以人为本，认为人最大的宗教。这样的宗教思维，这样的一个无神论的宗教政府，他今天执政掌权的时候，他就会来迫害那些有信仰、有上帝或者说有神明的宗教团体。所以这也是我比较倾向认为，有宗教信仰背景的人来做政治人物、来做执政者，都会好过没有的人。因为有宗教信仰的人，不论他是佛教徒、他是天主教徒、他是道教徒、他是基督教徒，甚至哪怕他只是犹太教徒，我都会比较相信他还会有一个更高的敬畏的对象，而这个对象就不会使得他人的自私与骄傲来任意的胡作非为。但是反过来，在中国大陆还没有办法出声或者说体谅像王怡牧师、金明日牧师的这一些信徒们，他们就真的比较软弱吗？不，我认为台湾的教会反而恰恰的比中国大陆的许多家庭教会的牧师更加的软弱。为什么？因为在台湾，我们今天连一个违反上帝心意的政策或是法律，我们连尚且在宗教自由的国度当中都不敢出声，我们只不过是刻意拿宗教分离来作为我们一个逃避被迫害的理由。可是纵观整个教会历史，哪里越有大迫害，哪里的复兴才会越大。所以这也是为什么我们看到，光是有金明日牧师或王怡牧师这样的牧者，他们在大陆敢于为地下教会、为家庭教会来发声，来希望争取早日政府能够将其合法化的运动过程当中，虽然他们被捕了，可是中国的基督徒人数却是在显著的复兴。反观台湾，我们过去30-40年的安逸生活，我们不敢谈堕胎法，我们不敢谈人工生殖法，我们不敢谈同婚，我们不敢谈安乐死，我们不敢谈性别是否多元还是性别只有2元的议题，我们每一样公共论述跟文化参与，我们都不敢表达。甚至可以说教会里安安静静鸦雀无声的时候，请问一下，这样子的一种所谓的政教分离，我们的人数为什么没有显著的增长？按照中华福音协进会的统计，从2018年到2026年，教会增长了300多间，但是我们的人数却断崖式的从最高峰的156万人跌到如今只剩70万人，足足腰斩了1半之多。这是多么讽刺的现象！这证明了一件事情，那就是基督的文化要在社会当中被传扬开来，它恰恰就必须要表现出基督是属文化，但仍然是超越文化的。我们必须要对文化发出声响，要让社会大众知道基督徒是怎么看待社会事件的，是怎么看待公共议题的。我们要让社会大众好奇的是，就算我可能不认同你基督徒，但是我至少我愿意多听听看你基督徒为什么对此有看法，为什么你对这些法律跟政策的辩护上面，你有一套合理且有论述、有逻辑条理的脉络。
这个档次不太一样啊。
当这样的声音出现的时候，我们才能清楚地将基督的文化传扬出去。可是当我们都绝口不提，我们只谈福音、谈救恩、只谈领人归主的时候，其实社会大众他听不到、看不到什么是基督的文化，他看到的只不过是曲高和寡的一群人，过着他们一个完全与世无争的日子。这也是为什么我们看到讽刺的现象，就是台湾的教会牧者没有像中国大陆现在所面临这样的逼迫的迫切感，但是我们确实也看到，哪里没有逼迫，哪里就自然会堕落。而教会的复兴从来就不是只建立在安逸以及看似平安与喜乐之上。我们这边是超级神队，我们就下部影片再见，拜拜。
Christ alone, our hope now forever.